They say the world moves fast, but on game days outside Sapphire Arena, it moved like a river in flood. Please subscribe to our channel, like and share our videos with your family and friends. People in bright jerseys, laughing, arguing, hugging, some already drunk at 10 a.m., stumbling past, holding hot dogs and overpriced sodas, faces painted blue and silver for the Panthers. Music thumped from the lot, and the bass shook the air. But for me, everything was still. I was standing on cracked pavement, next to a cooler I borrowed from Mrs. Patel down the hall, a sign taped to the front. $1 water, help Tessa go to robotics camp. I was 12, shoes pinching, big toe pressing against the fabric so hard I thought it would rip. Hair tied back in a frizzy ponytail, sweat already dripping down my back. Mom had offered to take me to the community center instead, but I shook my head. I want to earn it, Mom. She looked tired, dark circles under her eyes from working the diner's late shift, but she kissed my forehead. All right, baby, be safe. She didn't have to say we couldn't afford the camp. I already knew. I'd been there since 8 a.m., selling water bottles for $1. Some people took one out of pity, handing me crumpled bills without looking in my eyes. Others said, sorry kid, and kept moving. A group of teenage boys walked by, laughing too loud, one of them knocking over my sign with his backpack without even noticing. I bent down, fixed it, stood up again. Water, $1. By noon, I had sold 15 bottles, $15. Robotics camp cost $650. My stomach growled, but I ignored it. A man in a Panthers jersey came by, looked at the sign, shook his head, and tossed me $1 without taking a water. Good luck, kid. I whispered, thank you, but he was already gone. I took out my notebook, the one I kept in the side pocket of the cooler, flipping it open to the page where I drew my dream robot. A small car with sensors that could follow a line, coded with Arduino. I wanted to build it at camp, learn how to make drones, maybe even build prosthetic hands someday. My dad used to say, dream big, Tess. But he left before I turned 10, and I learned that dreams don't pay the rent. It was around 1 p.m. when I felt the world slow down. A shadow fell across my cooler. Water for $1. I looked up. A man in a gray hoodie, jeans, worn sneakers. He had a calm energy, the kind that made the noise around us seem to fade. Yes, sir, I said, trying to smile. He handed me a $5 bill. Keep the change. Thank you, I said. He didn't leave. He bent down, read the sign, and looked back at me. Robotics camp, huh? That's pretty cool. I nodded, swallowing. I want to learn how to build things, I said softly. What's your name? He asked. Tessa. He smiled. Hi, Tessa, I'm Marcus. And then, in the middle of game day chaos, Marcus did something no one else did. He sat down next to me on the sidewalk, beside my cooler, like we were old friends. The sounds of the crowd blended into a background hum. Cars honked, fans shouted, and someone dropped a glass bottle that shattered on the pavement nearby. But right there, Marcus was looking at me, not past me. So Tessa, teach me something about robotics, he said, opening the water bottle he'd bought. I blinked. Nobody's ever asked me that, I admitted. He chuckled. Well, I've got some time before kickoff. Show me what you're learning. I opened my dog-eared notebook, turning to the page with the line follower sensor. This is how it works, I said, pointing at my rough diagram. You use infrared sensors to detect the line, and the motors adjust to keep the robot on track. He leaned in, nodding, his eyes focused on the page like it was a blueprint for something important. I explained how coding could tell the motors when to turn, how the sensors could measure reflectivity to distinguish black from white. He asked questions, real questions, not the kind adults ask to be polite. How do you make it turn left? What happens if the sensor fails? How would you fix it? Every time I answered, he nodded, smiling. When I hesitated, he waited. And when I looked up from the page, his eyes were warm. You're smart, Tessa, you know that, right? He said. My throat tightened. I shrugged. Sometimes, I whispered. We sat there for 20 minutes. It was the first time I taught someone about the thing I loved. The first time someone outside my mom listened like it mattered. When Marcus finally stood, the crowd was moving into the stadium. Thank you for the lesson, he said. Thank you for listening, I replied. He paused, looking down at me. Do you have someone helping you get to camp? I shook my head. He nodded. Well, now you do. And then he was gone, swallowed by the crowd. The next week was a blur. School was a mix of math quizzes and me scribbling designs in the margins of my notebooks. I stayed after class to help clean the whiteboard so I could ask Mr. Daniels, the tech teacher, about coding logic. At home, Mom was working double shifts, coming home late, feet aching, trying to smile through her exhaustion. "I'm proud of you," she'd whisper, kissing my forehead before I fell asleep. One evening, there was a knock at our apartment door. I was alone, doing homework at the kitchen table. When I opened the door, Marcus was there. He held a robotics kit in one hand, a small toolbox in the other, and a bag of groceries at his feet. "Hey, Tessa," he said. "Hi," I whispered, stunned. "May I come in for a minute?" I nodded, stepping aside. He set the groceries on the counter and handed me the robotics kit. "I thought you could use this to start practicing," he said. I held it like it was made of gold, eyes wide. "Thank you," I whispered. Mom came home later, tired but curious, and Marcus introduced himself. "I met Tessa outside the arena," he explained. Mom looked worried at first, but Marcus smiled gently. "She taught me about robotics," he added. Mom's eyes softened. "She talks about robots all the time," she said with a tired laugh. Marcus left that night, promising to return on Saturday to help me set up the kit. Saturday came, and Marcus arrived with breakfast sandwiches. We spent the morning unpacking the kit, reading instructions, and building a small robot that could follow a black line on white paper. When it moved for the first time, following the line perfectly, I jumped up, laughing, clapping my hands. Marcus laughed too, eyes bright. "You did it, Tessa." I grinned. "We did it." After we finished, Marcus handed me a small envelope. "This is for your camp fund," he said. Inside was a check. $650. My breath caught. Marcus, I can't take this," I stammered. He knelt so we were eye level. "Yes, you can," he said softly. "Because you're going to change the world. And I just want to help you get there." Tears welled in my eyes. I hugged him, and he hugged me back. Careful, gentle, like a father I wished I still had. That night, as I lay in bed, the robotics kit on the shelf beside me, I whispered to the dark, "I'm going to change the world." I was never the most popular kid in school. I was the robot girl, the one who stayed behind during recess, tinkering with wires and sensors instead of playing basketball. The one who scribbled code on the back of worksheets while others passed notes about crushes. Sometimes, kids would snicker when I walked by. But I didn't care, because robotics made me feel alive. A month after Marcus gave me the robotics kit, I joined the after-school robotics club. It was a small room behind the library, dusty and warm, filled with donated laptops and half-broken tools. When I walked in the first day, clutching my notebook and the tiny robot I had built with Marcus, some of the kids looked at me like I was out of place. Among them was Olivia, tall, hair in a perfect braid, eyes sharp. She was the unofficial leader. Her father a local engineer, her robot always the best during demonstrations. "Hi, I'm Tessa," I said, holding out my hand. She looked me up and down, then at my shoes. "Hey," she said, turning back to her friends. During our first build day, I noticed Olivia watching me while I programmed my bot to follow a complex path. When my bot completed the route, weaving between obstacles, a few kids clapped. Olivia just crossed her arms. "Lucky," she muttered. The regional robotics competition was coming up in 2 months, and the club would enter a team. We had to build a robot that could complete a course while picking up and dropping off blocks in specific zones. Every day after school, I stayed late, working on our design, testing the code. Sometimes, I'd get home late to find Mom asleep on the couch, dinner cold on the table, and I'd whisper, "I'm going to make this worth it, Mama." 2 weeks before the competition, I stayed behind after practice to adjust the arm on our robot. I was tired, and the world felt heavy, but I was so close to getting it right. I left the robot charging overnight, hidden in the storage cabinet. The next morning, when I arrived early to practice, I opened the cabinet. The wires were cut. The battery pack was missing. I froze, staring, my breath caught in my throat. Tears stung my eyes, but I blinked them away. I ran to Mr. Daniels, the club advisor. Someone had sabotaged the robot. Olivia stood in the corner, arms crossed, eyes avoiding mine. I knew it was her. I couldn't prove it, but I knew. I went home that day, crushed. Mom found me curled up on the couch. "What happened, baby?" I told her, voice breaking, tears soaking her shoulder. She stroked my hair, holding me like she used to when I was small. "You can fix it, Tessa. You always find a way." That night, Marcus called. "Hey, Professor," he said, using the nickname he had given me. I sniffed. "Hi. What's wrong?" I told him everything. There was a pause, then he said, "You can rebuild. I'll come by tomorrow with parts. But the competition is in 2 weeks. 2 weeks is enough," he said softly. "You've got this." And somehow, I believed him. The next morning, Marcus showed up with a small bag of wires, sensors, and a replacement battery pack. We spent hours on the floor of our living room, rebuilding the robot. As we worked, I glanced at Marcus. He was focused, but sometimes his eyes would drift, growing distant, like he was somewhere else. "Marcus," I asked quietly, "why do you help me so much?" He paused, setting down the screwdriver. His shoulders dropped and he sighed. "I had a daughter once," he said. I froze. "Her name was Lily," he continued. Voice soft, almost a whisper. "She loved science. She wanted to be an engineer." He looked away, blinking quickly. "She passed away when she was 13. Car accident." The room felt silent, heavy. "I couldn't save her, Tessa," he said, tears filling his eyes. "But when I saw you out there fighting for your dream, I saw Lily's spirit in you." I reached out, placing my small hand over his. "I'm sorry," I whispered. He nodded. "I help you because I know Lily would have wanted me to. Because I believe in you, Tessa. You're going to change the world." We finished rebuilding the robot that night, testing it on the kitchen floor. When it moved, picking up blocks and dropping them precisely, we both laughed, tears in our eyes. "Go, Professor," Marcus cheered, clapping. I smiled, heart warm. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't alone in the world. The day of the competition arrived. Mom braided my hair, packing a peanut butter sandwich and a water bottle into my backpack. "You've got this, baby," she said, kissing my forehead. At the school bus stop, Marcus showed up, holding a small banner. "Gio Tessa." I laughed, embarrassed but also proud. The competition was in a large gym filled with teams, parents, judges, and rows of tables with robots lined up like soldiers. Olivia's team was there, her robot sleek, painted with bright colors, moving perfectly in practice runs. She smirked at me when I walked by. Our team's turn came. The robot had to navigate the course, pick up blocks, avoid obstacles, and complete the task under 5 minutes. As I placed our robot on the starting line, my hands trembled. I glanced at the stands, and there was Marcus, giving me a thumbs up, and Mom, smiling, holding her phone to record. 3, 2, 1, go. I hit the button, and the robot moved. It picked up the first block, turned, avoided the obstacle. My heart pounded in sync with its movements. Halfway through, it paused. Come on," I whispered. It adjusted, continued, dropped the block in the correct zone. As it crossed the finish line, the timer stopped. 4:52. We did it. The crowd cheered, and I jumped up, hugging my teammates. Later, as they announced the winners, I held my breath. Olivia's team placed second. Our team placed first. I couldn't believe it. They handed me the trophy, small but heavy, and I lifted it high, tears streaming down my face. In the crowd, Marcus was crying too, and Mom was beaming. After the ceremony, Olivia approached me. She looked at the ground. "I'm sorry," she muttered. I messed with your robot." I stared at her. "I know," I said. She swallowed, tears in her eyes. "I was scared you were better than me, and you are." I took a deep breath. "It was wrong," I said, "but thank you for telling the truth." She nodded, wiping her eyes. That night, I placed the trophy on the shelf, next to the robotics kit Marcus gave me. As I lay in bed, I whispered, "I'm going to make you proud, Marcus." And in my heart, I knew I would. Winning the competition was like flying. For a few weeks, I walked around with a quiet fire in my chest, trophy shining on the small shelf above our couch. My mother smiling whenever she glanced at it. Marcus would call me champion every time he saw me, and I'd laugh, telling him to stop before I turned red. But life doesn't pause for victory. One cold Friday morning, I woke to the sound of coughing. It was deep, heavy, echoing through our tiny apartment. I stumbled into the kitchen to find Mom hunched over the sink, a hand over her mouth, the other gripping the counter so hard her knuckles turned white. "Mom," I whispered. She turned, forcing a smile. "I'm okay, baby." But I saw the red on the tissue she tried to hide. That day at school, I couldn't focus. Numbers blurred on the board, my notebook stayed empty. During robotics club, I moved like a ghost, checking sensors, tightening screws. But my mind was with Mom, picturing her coughing, imagining the worst. When the final bell rang, I ran home. She was sitting on the couch, looking small under a heavy blanket. "Mom, we need to go to the doctor," I said, voice trembling. She shook her head. "We can't afford it, Tess." Tears filled my eyes. "I don't care, Mom, we have to." That night, I called Marcus. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, Professor," he said, but I could hear the concern in his voice. I told him everything, voice breaking. "Can you take us to the clinic?" I asked. "Of course," he said. The next morning, Marcus drove us in his old blue truck, the heater rattling, the windows fogging from the cold. At the clinic, Mom tried to protest when they asked for insurance, but Marcus quietly stepped forward, handing over his card. "Don't worry about it," he whispered to her. She looked at him, tears in her eyes, but he just nodded. The doctor said it was pneumonia, but they caught it early. With rest and medication, she would recover. I hugged Mom so tight that day, afraid to let go. That week, I cooked dinners, cleaned, and tried to study between caring for Mom. At night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, fear clawing at my chest. I was scared of losing her, scared of being alone, scared that my dreams would fall apart. One evening, Marcus dropped off soup and sat with me on the steps outside. "You're strong, Tessa," he said softly. I shook my head. "I'm scared." "It's okay to be scared," he said. "Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward even when you're scared." I looked at him, tears in my eyes. "Will she be okay?" He nodded. "She will, and so will you." As Mom slowly recovered, life began to steady again. But there was something else looming, the citywide science fair. It wasn't just another competition. The top prize was a scholarship to the State Robotics Academy, a program that could open doors to college opportunities, internships, and even national competitions. It felt like everything I had worked for was leading here. Marcus helped me brainstorm ideas for my project. "What are you passionate about, Professor?" he asked. I didn't even have to think. "I want to build a low-cost prosthetic hand for kids who can't afford them." He smiled. "Then that's what you'll do." I spent weeks gathering materials, using recycled plastics, old servo motors from broken toys, and wires Marcus sourced from a friend's shop. I worked late into the night, testing grip strength, refining the design, coding the controls to respond to simple sensors attached to a glove. Mom would watch from the couch, smiling softly. "Your dad would be so proud," she whispered once. I swallowed hard, blinking back tears. "I'm going to make you proud too, Mom." At school, word spread about my project. Some kids were supportive, but others weren't. Olivia, now less cold but still competitive, eyed my prototype during robotics club. "That's ambitious," she said. "I know," I replied, tightening a bolt. "Good luck," she said, and this time it felt genuine. The day of the science fair arrived. The auditorium was buzzing with students, parents, and judges moving between tables lined with projects. Posters with colorful charts, models, and laptops displaying simulations filled the space. I set up my table, carefully placing the prosthetic hand, the glove controller, and my presentation board with detailed explanations of the sensors, materials, and coding process. Marcus showed up, holding a small banner that read, "Geo Tessa, changing the world." Mom was there too, bundled in a warm coat, her smile brighter than I had seen in weeks. When the judges arrived, I took a deep breath. I demonstrated how the glove sensors controlled the prosthetic fingers, allowing them to grasp objects. One of the judges, an older man with glasses, raised an eyebrow. "You built this yourself?" he asked. "With some help sourcing materials." I said, "But the design and coding are mine." He nodded slowly, testing the grip strength, watching the fingers curl and release. "This is impressive," he said. After the judges moved on, Marcus hugged me. "You did amazing, Professor," he said. Mom kissed my forehead, whispering, "I'm so proud of you." As the awards ceremony began, I stood with my hands clasped, heart pounding. They called out the third-place winner. "Not me." "Second place." "Not me." I closed my eyes. And the first-place winner of the citywide science fair, earning a scholarship to the State Robotics Academy. I held my breath. Tessa Owens, for her project on low-cost prosthetic design. The world felt like it exploded in that moment. Mom screamed, hugging me. Marcus lifted me off the ground, spinning me around, both of us laughing and crying. As I walked to the stage to accept the award, I looked out at the crowd. For a moment, I saw Dad's face, smiling, proud, standing beside Mom. And I knew, wherever he was watching. Winning the science fair opened doors. The local newspaper interviewed me, calling me the kid engineer. I was invited to speak at the school board meeting about STEM opportunities for girls. Marcus took me to a bookstore, letting me pick out any 3 coding books I wanted. For a while, it felt like nothing could go wrong. Then came Mr. Daniels. He had always been supportive, helping me during robotics club, guiding us during competitions. So when he pulled me aside one afternoon, I didn't expect what he would say. "Tessa," he began, "about your project." I smiled. "Yes, Mr. Daniels." His face was tight, eyes hard. "Did you really build that yourself?" My smile faltered. "Yes, sir. I mean, Marcus helped me get materials, but the design and coding are mine." He shook his head. I find it hard to believe a middle schooler could build something that advanced. My chest tightened. Are you saying I cheated? He sighed, rubbing his forehead. I'm saying there have been concerns raised. I felt like the floor disappeared beneath me. Who said that? I demanded. That's not important, he said. But I've spoken to the board. They're considering reviewing your project. I ran home that day, slamming the door, throwing my backpack down. Mom found me crying on the floor. I told her everything, shaking. She held me, stroking my hair. Baby, you know the truth, she whispered. But what if they take it away? I sobbed. What if they take the scholarship? Later that night, Marcus came over. When I told him, his face darkened. I'll talk to them, he said. No, I whispered, shaking my head. I need to fight this myself. He paused, then nodded slowly. That's my girl, he said softly. The next day, I walked into Mr. Daniels' office, clutching my notebook, my designs, and the coding printouts. Mr. Daniels, I said, voice shaking but steady. I can prove every part of my project. He stared at me, silent. I will not let you take away what I earned, I said. For the next hour, I showed him everything. How I built the glove sensors, how I coded the control responses, how I tested the grip strength and adjusted the materials. At the end, I looked him in the eye. Do you still think I cheated? I asked. He was silent for a long moment. Then he sighed. No, Tessa, he said quietly. I was wrong. As I left his office, my heart was pounding. I wasn't just the robot girl anymore. I was a fighter, and I knew now. No one could take my dreams away from me. The morning started like any other. I was making oatmeal while Mom sat on the couch, wrapped in her robe, sipping tea. She was getting stronger, her cough mostly gone, and she smiled at me as I stirred the pot. Smells good, baby. I grinned. Chef Tessa at your service. There was a knock on the door. I wiped my hands and opened it. A man in a brown jacket handed me an envelope. Have a good day, he said, turning away. I closed the door, puzzled, and handed the envelope to Mom. She opened it, and I watched the color drain from her face. What is it, Mom? She didn't answer. She just handed me the paper, hands trembling. Notice to vacate. We regret to inform you that due to overdue rent, you are required to vacate the premises within 30 days unless payment is made in full. My world tilted. Mom. She shook her head, tears welling. I've been trying, Tessa. I've been working so hard. But with the hospital bills and the diner cutting hours. She broke down, covering her face with her hands. I sat beside her, wrapping my arms around her. It's okay, Mom. We'll figure this out. But inside, I was screaming. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, clutching the small trophy from the science fair, whispering to the dark. Please, don't take this away from us. The next day after school, I went straight to the diner where Mom worked, waiting outside until her shift ended. When she came out, she looked surprised. Why are you here, baby? I'm going to help, I said. I'll get a job. She shook her head, tears in her eyes. No, Tessa, your job is to study to build your future. But I couldn't just stand by. That evening, I called Marcus. When he answered, I couldn't hold it in. We're getting evicted, I whispered. There was silence on the line. I'll help, he said. No, I said firmly. I can't let you keep saving us. Tessa, I need to find a way. The next morning, I packed a small box of water bottles and snacks and set up outside the local community center. Just like outside the stadium, I held up my sign. $1 water, help us stay home. People passed by, some dropping coins, others stopping to buy a bottle. By the end of the day, I had $34. It was a drop in the ocean, but it was something. When I got home, Mom saw the money and broke down. Oh, baby, she whispered. I hugged her. We're going to be okay, Mom. But deep down, I didn't know how. Days passed, each one heavier than the last. Every day after school, I sold water and snacks, saving every dollar in a small tin under my bed. Mom tried to stop me, but I insisted. We're a team, remember? She would smile weakly, brushing hair from my face. One Friday afternoon, I came home, exhausted, dropping my backpack and reaching for the tin. It was gone. I froze. I tore apart my room, pulling out drawers, lifting the mattress, checking every corner. Nothing. I ran to the kitchen, breathless. Mom, did you move the tin? She turned, confusion on her face. What tin? The savings, I choked out. Her eyes widened. Tessa, I didn't touch it. My mind raced. The door had been left unlocked that morning, just for a few minutes, while I helped a neighbor carry groceries. Someone had come in. Someone had taken it. I collapsed onto the floor, sobbing. All those days, all those hours in the sun, Selling water, holding up that sign. Gone. That evening, Marcus came by, finding me curled up on the couch. What happened? He asked gently. I told him, voice shaking, tears streaming. He knelt in front of me. Tessa, I'm so sorry. I shook my head. It's over, Marcus. We're going to lose everything. He placed a hand on my shoulder. Listen to me. You are the bravest person I know. You don't give up, Tessa, not now. But it's all gone, I whispered. He smiled sadly. Money can be replaced, dreams can't. That weekend, something happened I didn't expect. On Sunday morning, there was a knock on the door. When I opened it, half the neighborhood was standing there. Mrs. Patel, the old man from downstairs, the lady from the laundromat, even kids from my school. They were holding bags of groceries, envelopes and coins in jars. We heard what happened, Mrs. Patel said softly. You help everyone, Tessa, said the lady from the laundromat. It's our turn to help you. They handed us the envelopes, the jars, the bags. Mom stood behind me, hand over her mouth, tears streaming. Thank you, she whispered. That night, we counted the donations. It wasn't everything we needed, but it was enough to pay a portion of the rent and buy us time. Mom hugged me tight. We're going to be okay, she whispered. And for the first time in weeks, I believed her. Life settled back into a fragile rhythm. Mom worked fewer hours, focusing on recovery. I returned to robotics, preparing for the State Robotics Academy. One evening, Marcus took me to the park. We sat on a bench, the sun setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. He pulled out a small box, handing it to me. Inside was a pendant, a tiny gear encased in glass. This was Lily's, he said softly. I looked up, tears in my eyes. Marcus. She wore it every day, he continued, voice shaking. She believed that even the smallest gears could make the biggest machines move. He placed it in my hand. And you, Tessa, are that gear. You're going to change the world. I hugged him, tears falling. Thank you for believing in me. He pulled back, looking me in the eyes. You don't need a stadium, Tessa. You already have a spotlight. That night I lay in bed, clutching the pendant, whispering to the darkness. I'm going to make you proud, Marcus. I'm going to make you proud, Dad. And as I closed my eyes, I saw the future. A lab filled with girls building robots. Kids smiling as they received affordable prosthetic hands. A world I was helping to build. The day I stepped onto the campus of the State Robotics Academy, the world felt bigger than I had ever imagined. Tall glass buildings gleamed under the sun. Students in hoodies carried laptops covered in coding stickers, and bots rolled down sidewalks delivering small packages. It was like stepping into the future. Mom kissed my forehead at the bus stop. You go make us proud, baby. Marcus stood beside her, holding a thermos. Professor, he said, smiling, show them what brilliance looks like. Walking into the main hall, I felt small. Kids with expensive backpacks, talking about competitions they had attended in other states, laughed and shared stories. Some of them glanced at my worn-out sneakers and thrift store jeans. I clutched my notebook tighter. Orientation began in a massive auditorium. The head instructor, a tall woman with sharp eyes named Dr. Ramirez, welcomed us. Here, she said, we don't care about where you came from. We care about what you're willing to build. My heart pounded. That week, we were assigned a project. Build a functional bot that can assist someone with a disability in daily life. The winning design would be showcased at the State Tech Fair. I knew immediately what I wanted to build. An improved version of my low-cost prosthetic hand, with enhanced grip control and a voice-activated command system for those without full arm movement. I stayed late every day in the lab, testing sensors, coding, recoding when errors popped up. Sometimes I'd video call Mom, showing her the bot's progress, and she'd cheer, even if she didn't fully understand the wiring. Sometimes Marcus would call during late-night coding sessions, reminding me to eat. But not everyone was friendly. His name was Ethan, a senior, tall with slick hair and a confident grin. He was known for winning competitions, and people whispered that he was Dr. Ramirez's star. At first, he ignored me, but one evening, as I tested the bot's grip strength, he sauntered over. That's cute, he said, watching my bot grasp a cup and lift it shakily. I looked up. Thanks. He smirked. You know this is a waste, right? You're competing against builds with AI integration and advanced materials. Your recycled plastic toy isn't going to win. His words stung, but I swallowed, keeping my voice calm. It's not a toy. It's for kids who can't afford expensive prosthetics. He rolled his eyes. Charity projects don't win competitions. Innovation does. He walked away, laughing with his friends. That night, I cried in the dorm bathroom. Was he right? Was I foolish to think I could compete with kids who had 3D printers at home, parents who were engineers, and access to labs I could only dream of? I called Marcus. Tessa, he said softly, why did you start this journey? I sniffled. To help people. Exactly, he said. Let them build to impress judges. You build to change lives. The next morning, I returned to the lab. I adjusted the sensors, tightened the grip, and improved the coding logic. When Ethan walked by, I ignored him. But a few days before the showcase, I arrived at the lab to find my bot on the floor. Pieces scattered, a cracked sensor blinking red. I froze. Tears filled my eyes as I sank to the floor, picking up the pieces. Ethan watched from across the lab, eyes cold. I spent that night in the lab alone. I spread out the broken pieces, my hands shaking. I could hear Ethan's voice in my head. Charity projects don't win. But then I heard Marcus. You don't need a stadium, you already have a spotlight. I took a deep breath and started rebuilding. I replaced the cracked sensor with a backup I had saved. I rewired the connections. I retested the code, debugging line by line. At dawn, as sunlight streamed through the lab windows, I powered on the bot. Grip, I commanded softly. The fingers closed around the cup, lifting it steadily. Tears streamed down my face. On showcase day, I stood beside my table. The bot displayed a poster explaining the design and its purpose. Students, parents, and judges walked by, asking questions. Some raised eyebrows when I mentioned recycled materials. Others smiled when they saw the price breakdown I displayed. Total cost, $38. Ethan's booth was across the room, displaying a sleek exoskeleton arm with advanced sensors, his group surrounded by students. He smirked at me, but I ignored him. When the judges arrived, they asked questions about durability, efficiency, and potential improvements. I answered each question with clarity, demonstrating the grip functions, showing how the voice activation worked. At the end, one judge, a woman in a blue blazer, smiled. Tessa, this is remarkable. Have you considered patenting this design? My heart skipped. I haven't, ma'am, I said softly. You should, she said. Later that afternoon, as the awards were announced, I stood with my hands clasped, heart pounding. Third place was called. Not me. Second place. Not me. I swallowed hard, preparing for disappointment. And first place, for a design that demonstrates not only innovation but compassion and accessibility. Tessa Owens. I gasped. The world blurred as I walked to the stage. People clapped, some cheered. In the back of the room, I saw Marcus, his eyes bright, clapping hard. As I took the certificate and trophy, I turned to the crowd. For a moment, I hesitated. Then I stepped forward. Thank you, I said, my voice steady. I built this because I believe technology should serve everyone, not just those who can afford it. I want every child who needs a prosthetic hand to know that it's possible. And it's possible because we choose to care. There was silence, then the room erupted in applause. As I stepped off the stage, Ethan approached me. For a moment, I tensed. He looked at me, eyes hard, then nodded. Good job, he muttered, walking away. That evening, Marcus took me to dinner. We sat in a small diner, the trophy on the table between us. You did it, Professor, he said softly. I smiled, tears in my eyes. We did it. That night, I lay in bed, holding the pendant Marcus had given me. I whispered into the darkness, I am the future I once dreamed of. And for the first time, I truly believed it. Winning the showcase changed everything. The next week, the local news station came to the State Robotics Academy to interview me. A woman in a navy blazer with a microphone asked, how does it feel to be a young inventor changing lives? I blinked under the camera lights, clutching the prototype hand. It's not about me, I said softly. It's about the kids who need it. I just want them to know someone cares. The segment aired that evening, showing clips of my bot lifting a cup, the recycled materials, my trembling smile as I spoke. At school, students approached me, some asking about robotics, others just wanting to say congratulations. Even Ethan, the boy who once sabotaged my bot, gave me a nod in the hallway. A week later, Dr. Ramirez called me into her office. Tessa, she said, sliding a letter across the table, you've been offered a full scholarship to the University of North Carolina's engineering program. My hands shook as I opened it. The words swam, tears blurring my vision. Mom's face flashed in my mind, her tired smile, her whispered prayers at night. Marcus's words echoed. You don't need a stadium, you already have a spotlight. I looked up at Dr. Ramirez, my voice shaking. Thank you. She smiled, her eyes soft. You earned it. That evening, I ran all the way home. Mom was folding laundry, humming softly. When I burst in, breathless, she looked up, startled. I handed her the letter. She read it, her hands trembling, then covered her mouth, tears streaming. "Oh, baby," she whispered. We held each other, both crying. The letter pressed between us like a promise. Life felt like a sunrise. Mom was stronger, working again. I was preparing to graduate early. My scholarship secured, my dreams closer than ever. One morning, I decided to visit Marcus to show him my acceptance letter. His small house was warm, the smell of coffee and old books wrapping around me as I stepped inside. "Professor," he called from the kitchen. "I have something to show you," I said, grinning. But when he turned, his face was pale, and his hands shook as he set down the coffee cup. "Marcus," I whispered. He smiled weakly. "I'm fine, Tessa, just tired." But the way he leaned against the counter, the way he blinked slowly, I knew. That evening, the phone rang. I picked it up, heart already sinking. It was the hospital. Marcus had collapsed. Mom and I rushed there, the cold air burning my lungs. In the sterile hallway, the nurse led us to his room. Marcus was lying on the bed, tubes in his arms, machines beeping softly. His eyes fluttered open when he saw me. "Hey, Professor," he rasped. I blinked, tears falling. "Don't call me that," I whispered, trying to smile. He chuckled, then winced, holding his side. "The doctor told us it was a mild stroke, but they needed to run more tests." Marcus tried to wave it off, but I could see the fear in his eyes. That night, I sat beside his bed, holding his hand. "You're going to be okay," I whispered. He squeezed my hand weakly. "I have to see you graduate," he whispered back. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and wilted flowers. Every day after school, I visited Marcus, bringing him updates on my projects. Reading aloud the letters I had received from kids who had seen the news and wanted to build bots too. Sometimes he would smile, eyes bright, but other times he would drift off mid-conversation, the tiredness pulling him under. One evening, the sky outside was a deep purple, the city lights blinking like fireflies. I sat by his bed, showing him a new design I was working on, a low-cost exoskeleton glove for kids with limited mobility. He studied it, his fingers tracing the lines on the paper. "Tessa," he said softly, "promise me something." I looked up, swallowing. "Anything. Don't let fear stop you," he whispered. "Not ever." Tears welled in my eyes. "I'm scared, Marcus," I admitted. "Of leaving Mom alone, of failing, of not being enough." He smiled, squeezing my hand. "Fear means you care, but you keep moving anyway. That's what makes you unstoppable." We sat in silence, the only sound the beep of the heart monitor. "Marcus," I said, my voice shaking, "thank you." "For what?" "For seeing me. For believing in me when I was just a kid selling water on the street." His eyes grew glassy. "I didn't just see you, Tessa," he whispered. "I saw the world you were going to build." I laid my head on the edge of his bed, crying softly. He placed a trembling hand on my hair. "You're my miracle," he whispered. That night, I walked home under the stars. The pendant he had given me clutched in my hand. I looked up, whispering, "I'll make you proud, Marcus." And as the wind brushed against my face, I felt him with me. The morning of graduation dawned warm and bright. Sunlight streamed through our apartment window, glinting off the small trophy shelf I'd built above my desk, each piece a reminder of how far I'd come. Mom helped me adjust the borrowed graduation gown, her eyes glistening as she smoothed the fabric over my shoulders. "You look beautiful, baby." I blinked back, tears. "I wish Dad could see this." She cupped my face, her smile soft. "He does." Marcus was out of the hospital, but still recovering. Using a cane to walk, his steps slow but determined. When he stepped into our apartment to pick me up, I froze. He was wearing a suit and tie. The pendant I'd given him resting over his chest. "Professor," he said, his voice warm, "let's go get that diploma." The auditorium was filled with parents, siblings, and classmates chattering nervously. I sat in the third row, clutching my speech, my stomach flipping. When my name was called, I walked across the stage. The lights bright, my breath catching as the diploma touched my hands. In the audience, Marcus and Mom stood, clapping, tears on both their faces. When it was time for my speech, I stepped up to the podium, my knees shaking. The microphone hissed softly as I adjusted it. I took a deep breath. "Most of you know me as the robotics girl." I began, the crowd chuckling softly. "But before I built bots, I sold water bottles outside Sapphire Arena, trying to raise money for camp. I didn't have fancy tools, or a 3D printer, or even shoes that fit." I paused, scanning the audience until I found Marcus, his eyes locked on mine. "But someone saw me, not for what I didn't have,